We got big news on the Phillies, and Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com, is in the house. So let's bring him in for this week's edition of the Phillies Mailbag. Frank is back, and we got a lot of questions, I'm sure, that came in previous to the big news today. So let's start with the big news today. Frank, JT Realmuto, right knee pain, meniscus injury. Would imagine it's going to be 6 to 8 week type of situation. Rafael Marchand is up. Is it a Marchand, Garrett Stubbs platoon for the foreseeable future, or is Dave Dombrowski going to be on the phone?
Well, I think they're going to let this play out a little bit first. Garrett Stubbs is actually, at the plate. He got off to a rough start, but Phillies have won 10 of his 14 starts with him behind the plate. So my guess would be that they want him working with the pitching staff as he has been and has been performing very well behind the plate as the catcher. And then we're going to see if the bat can get going a little bit. Certainly Garrett Stubbs got off to a really rough start in that regard. He's picked it up a little bit lately. I think Phillies fans sometimes they remember the starts rather than how things transpire from there. But I think that the Phillies will use Rafael Marchand, and the Phillies are actually kind of lucky because up until a couple of weeks ago, Marchand was not activated off the injured list, and they really would have been out of luck if they did not have Marchand. The rest of the organizational catching depth has not been good so far this year. Marchand had a back issue. He didn't play at all in the spring, and it took him till just a couple of weeks ago to really get moving. So they'll see what he's got in the tank after that injury. But I think for the Phillies, the good news is Stubbs, he is performing very well as the team's catcher. And then even though his batting average on the season is kind of low, in his last 7 games, he's been batting .278. So maybe he'll give you a little bit of something. But man, Mike, when I saw Stubbs leave that game or enter the game in London as a pinch runner for Realmuto, I thought something was up.
Yeah, let's dive into that whole situation. I said the same thing. I said, why is he running Stubbs for Realmuto? It's not like Realmuto's a slow guy. Obvious question would be, who moves to the 2-hole? Turner reportedly, or there have been some thoughts that he could come back this weekend in Baltimore. We don't have a lineup yet. Let me double check right before I pose this question to you because I don't want there to be a lineup out as we're having this conversation.
It always comes out while we're talking, Mike.
It usually comes out right about now. So, yeah, it could come out now. All right, who is your guess that will be hitting 2 tonight?
I think you're onto something with Sosa for tonight. I think they'll give him a shot. He has been hitting pretty well. And as you said, Trey Turner likely to come back as soon as this weekend. I think once Trey Turner is back, he will take over the 2-hole that he left when he hit the injured list. But for now, I think you might, just as you said, Sosa might get that shot. And then you might see at the same time the Phillies go with Merrifield. I wonder how the lineup will shake out tonight. They are facing a righty, which means the lefties will be in the lineup. So I don't know. Maybe they'll. I would expect David Dahla's in this lineup. So I think this lineup might be taking them a little bit longer to put together since this news is kind of recent.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think that Dahl and Merrifield are in a platoon right now, and that Dahl is just in the lineup against right-handers and Merrifield in the lineup against lefties for the foreseeable future with Marshall?
I think you would give him a shot. I mean, I assume Wilson will be the one who leaves the roster when Turner returns this weekend, if he does return this weekend. So I think what you're going to want to do if you're the Phillies, you want to see what Dahl has in the tank since he is out of options. You just can't send him to the minor league. And Merrifield, too, got off to a slow start. I think that especially now for the next six to 7 weeks, as you approach the trade deadline, you want to see what you have. And I don't think they want to subtract anybody from the roster if at all possible. So I can see those two getting those opportunities with Marsh out.
So the big news, JT Realmuto is injured, 10-day, retroactive, but I would imagine it's going to be a lot longer than 10 days. Probably 4 to 6, if not 6 to 8 weeks. You're probably talking, Frank, sometime in August, right?
Yeah, I was looking at the various catchers that have had this injury. Again, this is really quick research right in the last hour or so. But the last one I found that had that similar injury that was a catcher was Ben Rortvedt, who was a catcher for the Yankees in 2022. He hit the injured list on May 22nd. started his rehab stint on July 12th and wasn't activated till August. So, I think that the sense of urgency might be bigger to get a Realmuto back as opposed to Roitfeld, who is not a starting catcher. So, but I think that kind of gives you a sense that this is something which will take a while, and I would think the 6 to 8 weeks is kind of consistent. Other catchers, AJ Ellis, one-time Philly, he also had the injury. Rene Rivera, Salvador Perez, and a lot of those were about 2 whole months. So I think the Phillies need to really see what they have with Stubbs and Marchand, and this is going to give them an extended look. And again, the trade deadline is coming up at the end of July. Maybe they'll go and get somebody if they're not liking what they get out of those two in terms of their performance behind the plate.
Well, the first question in this week's mailbag is from James. So he says, who did the target at the trade deadline? Outfield, fielder, closer. I guess you got to throw catcher in there. I mean, there were some people that thought that a backup catcher was something that maybe they should have targeted anyway. To upgrade over Stubbs in the offseason, that did not happen. But is catcher now something they have to think more about? Or is that just, hey, we're up 9 games. We're going to get JT back. Let's continue to look at what we need to.
I think it's a wait-and-see situation whether you add catcher to the mix. I mean, Rafael Marchand, highly thought-of prospect for the Phillies for many years. The times he has come up to the major leagues, he has given them a little something. But it's probably time for Marchand to basically show with his performance whether he belongs or not. The Phillies ended up with an extra option year this year. They were able to finagle that thanks to his injuries. So he will be out of options after this year. So this is the year to see if Rafael Marchand belongs in the organization. And what better way is to give him some playing time?
Let me stop you with him real quick. What do we know? What do you know about Marchand? What should we expect? I mean, is he a guy that, like we were talking before you came on, Frank, does he take over the job and Stubbs stays in the same role that he was kind of in, or is this a straight platoon situation?
Well, Marchand's a switch hitter, so you can play him against righties or lefties. I would imagine, though,
he's
that
a better right-handed hitter.
Yeah, I think the Phillies would probably focus on the pitching more than they do the offensive production they might get from someone behind the plate. And right now, it's not Marchand who's worked with the Phillies pitchers. It's not Marchand who has a really good track record as a backstop this season. So I would expect Garrett Stubbs is going to get the bulk of the work, at least right now. And then they'll try to mix Marchand in, get him used to the pitching staff, and see what he can provide the team. The unfortunate thing is he did not have spring training with the other catchers. And if you had Marchand at spring training and he got to work with the pitching staff, I think you'd feel a little bit better about playing him more often. But it is time for him to show what he can do.
So he's the kind of guy is he known more as an offensive guy or a defensive catcher?
I think there was potential for both with Marchand, but unfortunately, I mean, when you have JT Realmuto as your starting catcher, JT Realmuto has not been getting hurt, so the opportunities have been few and far between for Marchand to come up, and then unfortunately this year he had that injury going into spring training. So I think this is an important time in Marchand's career to show the Phillies what he has to give them, and if they don't like that answer, then maybe they add some additional starting catching depth or backup catching depth when you get to the trade deadline.
So let's go to James's question about outfield or closer. There's been a lot of reporting about this and a lot of conversation leading up while I was gone. A lot of people, I was around a lot of Phillies fans this weekend, man, and everybody was talking about what they need to do. So let's answer James's question, outfield or closer.
Well, I think the answer is probably both. There's been certainly enough smoke lately to indicate that the Phillies are indeed engaged on the trade front, and it sounds like outfield is probably their primary place that they're looking for help. And Jim Bowden, Sunday on the front office on MLB's network radio on SiriusXM, he was saying that he heard this week that the Phillies are looking for outfield help, and then today he followed that up with a piece where he suggested 3 names. One is Lewis Robert Jr., who we were talking a little bit about last week. That's kind of the big name, I think, on the trade market for an outfielder. Tommy Pham and Jake McCarthy. So those are 2 White Sox players and 1 Diamondbacks player. And what Bowden is saying that the Phillies could match up on a blockbuster trade for Robert Jr. Now, he had a breakout season last year, really thought of as a prospect up until then. I think he's kind of been underwhelming considering the hype that he had going into the major leagues. And the nice thing about Robert, though, is while he would have been a free agent after 2025, he worked out a deal with the White Sox where he's signed through his rookie contract, and then there are 2 club options for 20 million each for 26 and 27. So if this guy becomes the star that a lot of people thought he would, that's a pretty friendly deal for a team to keep him around for a while. But he's battled some injury this year. He's only been batting 192 so far this season for the White Sox, but he sort of is the big name out there. And Tommy Pham, the Phillies were kind of linked to him last year, and then he ended up joining the Arizona Diamondbacks. And maybe you remember how that went in the playoffs. He had that big home run against the Phillies in Game 6 of the NLCS. And McCarthy as well. He was on that Diamondbacks team last year. He was kind of a platoon left-handed bat for the Diamondbacks these several years. And so that kind of tells you that the Phillies could be considering that as an option as well. David Dahl right now, he's kind of filling that role. If Dahl sticks around, I mean, maybe they don't think McCarthy is an upgrade over him. But one thing, too, that Bowden said, Phillies are probably in on relievers, too. But it sounds like, the one name that we keep talking about, Mason Miller of the Oakland Athletics, sounds like the A's have very little interest in trading him. So I think we're going to have to wait and see. There's a lot of teams that are still in this, a lot of teams around that 500 mark, which, a good week puts them into playoff contention. So I think we'll see later on who the relief arms are on the trade market. And I think the Phillies, like a lot of teams that are in contention, there seems to be an annual relief pickup for almost every single team. And I would expect the Phillies to be doing that once again.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people, Alvarado blows the save the other day. I don't even know if it was so much, I think JT, that ball, I don't think got crossed up. It was hard to tell from where we were sitting. But it looks like a ball that JT probably should have caught, right?
Yeah, could be an indication that JT wasn't feeling well. I mean, JT looked banged up even before he got banged up a couple times in the last week, right? The one foul ball to the crotch, one foul ball off his chest. So it was clear that JT was struggling a little bit during that series. So right. I wouldn't be shocked if that led to that.
Right. So a lot of people, complaining about Alvarado, like, hey, he blew a save. But Alvarado, how do you feel about him as the closer?
Well, I think he's going to get the key outs against the top lefties at the back end of the bullpen. It'll be him. Some days it'll be Jeff Hoffman another. But he is kind of the go-to reliever. I mean, this was like the one blip. And you could also nitpick, could Bohm have played some better defense there that led to some of those runs? I'm not going to kill Alvarado for that. I think of all that happened that was bad, I would have liked to have seen a better Nick Castellanos at bat at the end there. He just came up swinging. No matter what was thrown, he was hacking. And unfortunately, that was not a good at bat. And if he had just had a little bit more patience, perhaps Phillies could have at least tied that up there. So I'm not overly worried about Alvarado having a bad day because his stuff was still there. It's not like he was all of a sudden hurting. It's just you have a long layoff like that, you fly to another continent. Maybe your control will be a little bit off.
All right, Frank, obviously, and by the way, let me give another update to the Phillies lineup. I have not seen anything, and I still do not see anything here. So the Phillies do not have a lineup out tonight in Boston against the Red Sox. Let me get into that real quick. London, 2 days, home, they got yesterday off. Now Boston, and then Baltimore. Not an easy part of the schedule here, and now you're down 3 pretty key everyday players.
Yeah, this is going to be a challenge for the Phillies, I think. It almost feels to me, Mike, like we're coming off another All-Star break. When it feels like you had the long period of time and very little action. So, yeah, I think that the relief pitchers, you saw that. I thought going into the second game of the London series, you thought, okay, you could pull Walker early because all the relievers are nice and rested. Well, you didn't see them pitch their best performances. So, it might take a while for Phillies to get back on track. Although one thing I know that they were doing, that they were talking about, was they were being very, very intentional as to how they approach things like sleep coming back. They told the players only 1 hour nap on the plane back. That's it. And then they could get a good night's sleep and then have yesterday off in Boston to sort of get their bodies back.
I wish they would have given me that plan.
I didn't think I'd see you today, Mike. So
I probably shouldn't be here, Frank.
so yeah, the jet lag is a real thing. So I would look into that. Hopefully though, if you get a good outing out of Zach Wheeler, if the others are a little bit off, I think you'll think the Phillies will do okay, and then they can get back into the routine.
Yeah.
But they're two tough teams.
No, that's what I'm saying. Is like the fact that, hey, they got to have some sort of jet lag. No matter what's going on, the time change is something. There's jet lag involved there. But then having to go right back on the road and not sleep in your bed again and then go right back on the road again. I know they're easy trips to Boston and Baltimore, but Baltimore is one of the best teams in baseball. Boston's okay, but after that road trip, the schedule makers didn't do them any favors.
No, I don't think so. I think it would have been nice for them to go home after a trip like that to London, and I think we're gonna find out a lot this week about how well that they can adapt on the fly. But this is this is going to be a challenge this week. I think that's very, very fair to say.
No doubt, this is going to be a tough week, and now you have to do it with some injuries. And obviously, as we mentioned, the lineup not out tonight. We're keeping our eyes on that. When that comes out, we'll get it for you right here on the Sports Best. JT Realmuto on the 10-day list. Let's get a couple quick questions here. We can kind of combine the two here. A lot of people looking at the draft, what the Phillies might look at there. And then Hugh wants to know any chance the Phillies bring up a guy like Mick Abel to pitch this time of year. With all these guys getting hurt, would they start to look down to the minors to a guy like Abel?
Well, I think the next man up is probably Michael Mercado. I didn't really get much into him there, but Mick Abel's been struggling a little bit at AAA Lehigh Valley, and I think that's one reminder when we look at prospects, we look at the draft, we look at who's in the system. I mean, they're still prospects, but two, there's a lot of learning to happen. I think what you're seeing is a lot of guys, they breeze through the lower levels of the minor leagues, and then when they get to say AAA, they start to get a little bit of competition that they weren't used to. You're starting to see more discipline from the players as they rise up in the system. You're seeing some guys who were in the major leagues now back down at AAA, and they've learned a thing or two while they were up at the major league level. So I think when you're looking ahead in terms of who could help them down the line, I would put Michael Mercado as the number one guy. I think he's a guy pitching very, very well, AAA, Lehigh Valley. Very few innings under his belt. I think they're intentionally keeping his innings down so that he can perhaps help the team down the line. And I think that's been a very intentional thing we've seen with other prospects in the system. George Klassen, who we were talking about a few weeks ago, he actually just got the promotion up to Jersey Shore, as did Aiden Miller. Perhaps a little bit sooner than the draft that I was thinking that it would take for them to get that rise to Class A. A lot of them are showing the talent at the lower levels, but you want to keep their innings held back a little bit so that they can help you down the future later. So yeah, Mick Abel, he's pretty young. He's 22. I'm starting to wonder if we'll see him this year at all at the major league level. But he's still throwing hard. Still shows he's got the stuff. He's got to learn how to pitch, I think, and that's what we're looking for in Mick Abel at this point.
All right, there you go. Phillies Mailbag. Generally, when Frank is on, we do get the lineup for you live. That has not happened yet. I would imagine the injury to JT Realmuto probably has a little something to do with that. I want to ask you, Frank, because you were not in London.
I wish I was.
It was.
You sounded like you had a good time, Mike.
I would say it was one of the greatest live sporting events experiences I've ever been to. It was so cool. I had never been to London. The city itself is amazing. I met UK Phillies. He great. That dude was a rock star over there, by the way.
Yep.
And he was drunk every second I saw him. I don't know how he kept going, that guy, man. God bless him. I said I ran into Caleb Cotham, talked to him for a while. He gave me some interesting little nuggets. But how was it presented on television?
Terribly.
That's what I had heard.
I could not believe what I was watching, Mike, that the pregame show was live from Yankee Stadium. Like I thought with something with this hype, this build up, the thing that's supposed to help launch Major League Baseball in England, I just didn't understand why they wouldn't have a live crew at the event.
So Trafalgar Square was kind of like the place for everything. So they're trying to this is what I don't understand. They do these events to try to introduce the sport to another country in hopes that other countries maybe want to get like a MLB deal, like get the games on over. Nobody knew about this game over there. Nobody. I mean, yeah, it was packed with Phillies fans, not so much Mets fans. The locals had no idea. none. Now, you went down to Trafalgar Square, sure, but outside of Trafalgar Square, there was no representation from Major League Baseball. I was very surprised by that. Like, normally you go to a Super Bowl, they got the flags all over on all the streets, and there's so much presence that the Super Bowl's there, or the draft is coming, or something. Like, other than Trafalgar Square, there was nothing. The stadium is so far out. Now, they did a great job. The stadium was really well situated. I would say there was no bathroom. Every American arena can take a page out of this stadium. There was never a line at the bathroom. There was bathrooms everywhere. I mean, you could make a right and make a wrong turn and go into a bathroom. You could make a left and think you're making a wrong turn, and you found another bathroom. The beer line and the food lines, they were non-existent. There was nobody in the lines. You can constantly just go and get food and beer and drinks and whatever you – there was very little line. So whatever they're doing, we need to take a page out of that because it was very well run there. So that's what I would say about that.
Well, Lincoln. I think similarly, Lincoln Financial Field on July 31st, they're hosting Liverpool versus Arsenal in a football matchup. I don't know that a lot of people around here are going to know about that either. But I think the goal is the same, right? To try to expose the sport to new audiences but yeah, I think the Phillies fans they went out in great number, and I don't know if that kind of changed the whole point. If it's all Phillies fans and Mets fans anyway, the Eagles going to Brazil, although I don't know a lot of fans are going to make that trip from the sounds of things.
Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah,
it doesn't sound like it.
I think you're doing these things to try to expand these sports internationally and expand the fan base and expand the revenue overseas. But yeah, I think like we don't hear a lot about this football match in South Philadelphia next month. A lot of it might go on deaf ears.
Well, it was a fun experience. It was an amazing experience. I can't stress enough how awesome that the experience was. I think the Phillies loved it. Bryce Harper said he thinks that they should invite 4 teams and be there 2 weeks and do a round robin and have the 4 teams all play each other. I think that's a great idea. Rob Thompson said he would basically love for the Phillies to go back every single year. I would be cool with that because I would love to make another trip back there because you could be there for 3 months and not see everything.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people like me who did not go and wish they had another opportunity, So, I think that's how, baseball is how I got to see a lot of cities around the country even, When the Phillies would go, I would make it that would be my excuse to go
absolutely.
see it, So I think for a lot of people, that's their excuse to go check out London. And I certainly knew more people than I could count right now that made the trip. And I think that was good for tourism and good for fans who really just want to have another experience. And unfortunately, Mike, I'm going to Baltimore and I didn't go to London.
I will be in Baltimore as well.
Well, I'll have to.
Are you going the whole week? Are you going the whole weekend?
I'll be there Friday and Saturday. I'm going to try to get home for much of Father's Day.
I will be there Saturday.
We will have a beer.
I'll meet you at Max's Tap House. All right, Frank, take care.
That's good to me, Mike. All right, thank you.
All right, Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com, Phillies Insider here on the Sports Bash.